Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of uNDeterred, a Dem-NPL podcast. My name is Patrick Hart and I have Lisa Hermosillo with me. Really quick, if you guys haven't met me yet, I want to show something every week that's different about us. I grew up on a farm in northeast North Dakota. We had a 100-year farm. The flood of 97 really hurt us as a farm family, but I got to grow up in a Class B school in a very small town, and I absolutely loved it. It was about 500 or 600 people, and there was a lot of pancake dinners in the basement of the city hall to fund the ambulance and the fire department, to fund the band boosters. It was absolutely amazing experience growing up in small town North Dakota. I appreciate that, and I hope that more people can get back to their roots. Lisa, tell me something new about you today.
I'm actually kind of going to tag team a little bit about what you just mentioned. I grew up in a small town, also on a farm in Southwest Minnesota. So I grew up doing a lot on the farm, things that most people wouldn't really picture me doing. So driving tractors, feeding cows, all of that. And that actually has been a big part of my life. And the farm is a third generation family farm. And so that would always be a really close and memorable thing for me. And my kids always love going back to Minnesota and visiting just for that reason. And yeah, so I love being a farm girl, and I really miss it. And maybe someday I'll be back on a farm.
Now, I don't imagine I need to ask, but you guys drove John Deere, right?
No.
Uh-oh. We got green and gold running through our veins. Yeah, anyway, you guys, I want to talk about two things this week. We have an amazing interview, first of all, with Zac Ista. He's our House minority leader. So essentially, Gretchen and Zac are two interviewees so far, sit in the middle of the House chamber's floors, and they get special privileges to talk and to help carry out the needs of the party in the caucus. So I'm really excited to have Zac Ista coming up really quick. But since I interviewed Zac, I found another absolutely horrible bill that I want to talk about. Now, do you guys remember a couple cycles ago, we had term limits on the ballot? It would have been 2 elections ago, 2022. In my opinion, it was a bad bill. It's too short. It targets the wrong people. 8 years for term limits is not enough. I think by the time you figure out the balance, you figure out how each of the committees work, how to push an agenda through and get bills that mean something to people passed. By the time you learn all that, your 8 years is going to be up. So I think personally, if we were to extend that, that would be a good idea. However, the will of the people voted on this initiated measure, and it overwhelmingly passed. I think 62, 64%. And again, while I don't think that's good legislation, the people of North Dakota did. However, the Republicans brought back a bill, House Bill 1300, to clarify. So essentially, if you were elected after redistricting, you were elected to a 2-year term. Now, what the language was is that if the population in your district shifted 25%. So if you had 2 or 3 roads that outline your district and that population moved, so you got 25% new population, then that triggered you to have to run again in an off cycle. Someone like Carla Rose Hansen had to do this. Josh Boucher, I think, has ran 3 cycles in a row now. District 44 even. So essentially what that did is that if you won, you had a 2-year term, and now if you won again, you're going to serve a 4-year term, which will give you 6 years of service to the state. And at that point, unless you have a Senate colleague that's willing to step down and you can move to the Senate, your political career may be for an end. And again, that's what the will of the people. That's what you guys voted for. Whether or not, again, I think that's a good bill or not, we are seeing Republicans seeking to clarify, we're going to use air quotes, clarify that. And essentially what they're going to do is ask for another term so they can serve 2 full terms. Lisa, what do you think of this? Is this hypocritical, going against the will of the people?
I mean, I think so. It's interesting. I kind of expected this to come back up. I just wasn't expecting that per se. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how this pans out, and I kind of am curious to reach out to several other people and ask them what they think about this as well. But I know a lot of at least District 38 legislators are very happy about it. So, but they get something out of that one. But yeah, I'd
And
agree.
again, I got to get back to the fact that once these incumbent legislators, and by the way, this is a Republican sponsored bill, once the Republican legislators get to Bismarck, they know better than you. And bills like this are a prime example of how they want to subvert the voice of the people, you, from what you said. Very similar to the way that we monkeyed with the oil extraction tax, which again was an initiated measure until we lowered it. And then the budget crashed in the state government. Imagine that. So Lisa, that's what cooked my goose this week. I just saw that one pop up over the last couple of days. The Dakota Monitor has done some really good reporting on it. Again, House Bill 1300. Lisa, do you have any bills this week that kind of got you riled up?
Yeah, there's several, but one I want to focus on was House Bill 1556. And this one I have not seen a whole lot of publicity on. And for those who have been adopted or our parents that adopt, this one is one that I would highly recommend you guys look into. But this one seeks to give parents who adopt the ability to quote unquote return kids that they've adopted that have been diagnosed with a severe mental health disorder. They've either committed a violent crime or sexual in nature type of crime, or that the family feels like there's imminent danger to any of the household members. Now, I agree with the last two parts of that, but the first one is what really got me upset because as someone who advocates for mental health, I think this is painting a really bad picture and just sets the example of, again, where we fail and how we look at mental health. I think this bill does not talk about how are we going to actually help these families get resources, where it doesn't talk anything about funding, insurance coverage, and talking about how to keep families together. Now, I also think it was very ill-defined when it comes to the severe mental health disorder. That could be depression, that could be anxiety, which are both uh, disorders that can be addressed and treated as long as it's in a timely manner and done appropriately. So I don't think having severe depression or severe anxiety should warrant parents being able to just return their kids. I think this is, I really hope that they come back to this and make some good amendments to it because as it stands right now, I think this is actually a very dangerous bill, especially for kids who are very vulnerable going through the foster system or being adopted. A lot of these kids have had traumatic experiences, and you have to somewhat understand where they're coming from. And if they know, hey, if I get a mental health disorder, am I going to lose my family and go back into the system? So this one really got to me. And for those that don't know, I mean, I'm adopted, so I took this one pretty personally.
You know what comes to my mind, my knee jerk is this old rap lyric by Eminem, there's no halfway crooks. And what that means is that either you're in or you're out. And when you're a parent, you have to be a parent 100% of the time, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, through thick and thin. That's what you're doing. And this kind of gives an out on that. And I don't really like that. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about an interview with Gretchen a couple of weeks ago when she talked about expanding access to mental health across state lines in Minnesota. And those are the values that we stand for. So Lisa, I'll tell you, I appreciate you. Do you have any last words or anything else that caught your eye this week during session?
Not really. That was one that really stuck out to me. And then, of course, the bill that was helping teachers get their licenses or their lifetime licenses earlier than 30 years. That one was not so much a bad one. That one was really good to see come out. But I've been looking at that one quite a bit too. And then what was the other one? There was one today that I was looking at. Shoot, sorry, I'm blanking right now. But no, there's a lot out there to keep track of just because of the number of bills that are that were introduced. So.
Well, if you guys haven't, I would recommend you follow, I'll say somewhat affiliated organizations. Of course, you know, we have the same values such as AARP. If you guys don't follow Prairie Action Network, that's another resource. You know, of course, Badass Grandma's Club, they definitely fight for, I think, what we believe in, even though we might not be working together. There are those like-minded organizations. So make sure you like, follow, and share with them. Really quick, before I jump over to Zach's interview, I want to touch on Bismarck. March 22nd, we have our district, our regional reorgs. So if you're in a Bisman district, gosh, off the top of my head, I would say 7, 8, 30, 32, 35, 47. And if I missed one, please forgive me, 34 over in Mandan. We're all going to be getting together at Horizon Middle School. I believe at 10 o'clock, 10 to 2, we're going to be electing new district chairs. We're going to be filling out those district positions. So please come to that event in Bismarck. And then May 3rd, we're going to do that same thing again in Bismarck, except on a statewide level. So positions like mine, state treasurer, it's up. It's for a 2-year term. State party chair, vice chair, and secretary, of course, are up. We'll also be re-electing regional reps at those meetings. So Lisa, do you guys have a meeting that's similar in Minot coming up?
We absolutely do. We decided on March 8th. We don't have a time in place quite yet. And that would also cover districts 3, 4, 5, 6, 38, and 40. But as soon as we get a time, we'll make sure to push that out.
Yep, and I do apologize. I don't have the data for Fargo's or Grand Forks yet, but we can hopefully put those in the crawl here at the bottom of the screen. So thanks for that. And with that, you guys, I'm going to queue up Zac Ista, again, our House Minority Leader. Zac's a lawyer from Grand Forks. He's one of the best, well-spoken guys I know. I really hope you like the interview as much as I liked doing it. Hey guys, welcome. I'm really excited to bring this next guest to the stage. This is Zac Ista. He's a representative from District 43. Zac, is this your second or third term?
This is my third session, first full term as a lawmaker.
Okay. And I'll tell you, of all the people I might parade on the podcast, I'm going to tell you I like them all the best. But when Zac talks, it's like he's succinct, he's on point. Maybe that's the lawyer in you, or maybe that's just the good guy.
No, the lawyer in me is when I ramble too much.
So let me ask you this before we start with session. We talk a lot about in the party defining ourselves. It seems like a lot of people are telling us who we are, and we're not always taking every opportunity to talk about who we think we are as Democrats. When you think of the Democratic Party in North Dakota, your caucus, yourselves, what do you think? How would you want us to be defined?
Yeah, I think your perception is right. It feels like we're in this defensive posture, not just locally, not just here in North Dakota, but nationwide. The vibes, if you will. It feels like this Trumpism is ascendant. That's what's grabbed the public's attention. And I think we can kind of lean into that as Democrats, because I view us as guardians of a progressive legacy here in North Dakota, across the United States. We're guardians of the progress that's been made on justice, on equality, on fairness. We've become the guardians for democracy itself and the rule of law. So I think we just got to remind voters and folks across the country that that's what we stand for. I mean, we're the party of Medicare and Medicaid, the party of Social Security, the party of reproductive rights, the party of LGBTQ rights, the party of civil rights. I mean, this is the legacy of the Democratic Party, and we can't let it get stolen from us by those who want to define us. So let's steel our spines and be guardians of a legacy we should be proud of.
I'm really glad I introduced you as someone that always needs to be heard, because your words are so perfect. And then you immediately showed an example for that. You know, this summer on the campaign trail, I had to give a speech. I wasn't really ready for it. And I thought about how I could address that constituency. And what I came up with is that as a candidate, I just wanted to be heard. And the more I thought about that phrase, the more I think that everyone just wants to be heard. They just want to have a voice. And I really feel like our party gives that voice to the people.
We do. And I think, we're aware that there's ebbs and flows in political cycles. And right now it's not the most robust time for Democrats in North Dakota. And my Senate colleague, Leader Kathy Hogan, and I have talked about this. We're the keepers of the flame right now. We might not hold a statewide office or have big numbers in the legislature, but we have to keep the flame alive for those democratic values we share, the ones we've talked about. And it's not always glamorous, it's not always rewarding, but it's so important to do that so that when those cycles do change, when people inevitably get fed up with what we're going to see out of Washington, what we do see out of Bismarck, we'll be there ready to hit the ground running and earn their votes again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you want to talk about the good bills or the bad bills?
Oh, let's start with the good. Let's start with the good.
So, what did you guys introduce today? Did anything make it out of committee or off the floor?
We've had some progress so far. Let's backtrack a little bit. Here in the House of Representatives, we're talking here the last part of January. We had our bill filing deadline on January 20th. So, members of the North Dakota House, we can't introduce bills anymore. But we set a record. We introduced 620 bills in the North Dakota House of Representatives. That's 94 members introduced 620 bills. That's the highest mark since 1991. So nearly my entire life, we've never introduced that many bills. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. Our Democratic caucus, we have 11 outstanding Democrats in the North Dakota House. We've introduced 45 bills. And I'm so proud of these bills because I look at them and I'd be proud to be a co-sponsor. I think every single one. I mean, let me highlight right off the top. We've got a lot of great bills that would benefit Indian country here in North Dakota, our tribal nations that share geography with our state. We're so fortunate to have in our caucus Representatives Jamie Davis, Colette Brown, and Lisa Finley DeVille, who are enrolled members of tribal nations. We also have Representative Gretchen Dobrovich, who I know has been a guest on your podcast, who has built a career on partnering with tribal nations on healthcare. So, amongst them, they've introduced bills to require consultation with tribal leaders when there's policy decisions that impact those tribes. They've introduced bills to do a comprehensive study of taxation issues that implicate tribal members. They've got bills that would promote education and education infrastructure on reservations, bills that would promote economic development. And one I'm really excited about comes from my good friend, Representative Jamie Davis. We're used to our phones and our TVs buzzing for a silver alert if an elderly person goes missing, an amber alert if a child goes missing. She's proposing a new feather alert that would help address the missing and murdered Indigenous persons crisis that we have, not just in North Dakota, but across the country. Another tool for law enforcement and communities that when a person goes missing, more often than not, a woman goes missing, let's broadcast an alert using this infrastructure we have so that we have a better chance of finding that person before anything bad happens and reuniting them with their family and friends and community.
Well, I love that, especially having understood how many Native Americans live off of the reservation. And, it's not just a reservation. There's, the reservation system, but there's a tremendous amount of population in Bismarck and Fargo and Grand Forks. So I really like getting that network together to try to have a fast action response. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense to me to do that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. And, beyond some of those bills that are focused on Indigenous North Dakotans, I took special note of other bills we have related to healthcare. That's a big topic for people. I think mission number one this legislative session is how do we lower out-of-pocket costs for families, right? I think that was probably the biggest driver nationally and locally when I was knocking on doors for candidates. That's what we heard from people is everything just costs too damn much. Sure. So how do we do that? So we've got bills from my colleagues that would make rural ambulance care more available, therefore more affordable. We have bills that would make dementia care more accessible, childbirth more accessible through doulas and other maternity care providers. One bill I'm just so passionate about, and we'll talk a lot about it, is, one of the biggest costs for families with school kids is lunch and breakfast at school. Sure. It pencils out to about $850 per student per year. And we've got a bill to finally say, let's make those free for everybody. We've seen poll after poll after poll has been done in North Dakota. Upwards of 80% of North Dakotans support this idea. So as much as I'd like it to be true, 80% of North Dakotans are Democrats. So we know this is Republicans, Democrats, Independents support this idea. There's a couple of bills on file already, one sponsored by Democrat Representative Lori Beth Hager out of Fargo, one by Republican Representative Pat Hattlestead out of Williston. Both bills have bipartisan co-sponsors. If you would pencil it out on a map, you'd see these folks represent many different regions of the state. So I think that just highlights the broad-based support for this. But these school meals are an awesome way to not just cut costs for families, but talk to any teacher and any administrator in school. They'll tell you kids whose bellies are full learn better and behave better. And when kids are learning better and behaving better, we're going to have better outcomes in our classrooms. It's probably going to help teachers stay in those classrooms longer too. So that's another big issue for us.
What I like about that too is when you think about farm to table and the beef industry in North Dakota, the agriculture industry, that'd be great if we can somehow remove some of those barriers and get locally sourced product too, instead of relying on big corporations to bring in food from the factory.
Absolutely. There's a grassroots coalition called Together for School Meals that has been stood up to support this issue this session. And it doesn't just include teachers and nutritionists and dietitians and healthcare providers. It includes farmers and ranchers from across the state, because they see that connection as well, that, school lunches a lot of times have some of those processed foods because they have to work within a budget. And those foods meet the federal, nutrition guidelines, but we know like locally sourced grass-fed beef, those fruits and vegetables that you can get in North Dakota, that would not only be healthier for kids, they're probably going to like the food a lot more. You're going to have a lot less waste that goes into the trash can at lunch every day. So it's just a real opportunity in our state to be responsive to what people are asking for at a time where we have a lot of money to invest here in the state too.
Love it. No, great. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. So let me just, if we have a couple of minutes, I want to highlight just a couple of other things that we've been working on. My colleague, Representative Carla Rose Hansen's been a champion of criminal justice reform too. I think she's really got a good pulse for how do we balance community safety, right? We all need to be safe in our homes and in our neighborhoods, but making sure we're not just wasting taxpayer dollars by locking folks up without getting them the rehabilitative services they need, whether it's addiction or mental health or just a chance to pull themselves up and get back on the right side of our laws. So she's been a real leader of that. And Representative Liz Conmey out of South Fargo is leading a bipartisan effort to decriminalize marijuana in the state, right? We've seen efforts at the ballot box to legalize it recreationally. I've supported those. Most of my caucus have, and it keeps falling just short of getting across that finish line. So Representative Conmey says, let's take the next best step and decriminalize possession of small amounts. So instead of getting a criminal citation, having to go before a criminal judge, treat it like a traffic ticket. Pay your fine for those people that are just possessing and using for personal use.
Well, I really see that too. I was an initiated measure sponsor for the initiated measure last cycle. And it really came down to harm reduction for me. When I started hearing about all the laced drugs that were out on the street, and also the fact that a big shift in perspective for me was that the drug isn't the gateway drug, it's the drug dealer. If you go to a recreational marijuana facility and they're selling recreational marijuana, that's all they're selling. If you go to a guy down the street and maybe he has something else, maybe that's for sale as well. And if we can stop our children, our youth from that situation, I think we can get a good handle on it. And Minnesota, South Dakota,
Montana, Manitoba,
it's all around us.
Right, so we're surrounded by it. And I'm not one that says it's harmless. I think there's a public health risk there, but it's a manageable one. We manage the public health risk of alcohol being legal, of tobacco and other nicotine products being legal. Doesn't mean we should encourage their use or hide the possible risks, but it's one that I think responsible adults can choose to do with it what they want. So that's where I stand on it. It sort of aligns with where I think my caucus views reproductive rights. The government shouldn't step in and tell you what you can and can't do in your personal capacity.
Hold on, I want to soundbite that. So you're saying the Democrats are standing for smaller government encroachment on our lives?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the bills we are doing versus the bills some of the more extreme conservative lawmakers are introducing, the Democrats are absolutely the smaller government party now. There's a strain of North Dakota Republicans that want to just control every aspect of your life that they find personally offensive, whether it's It's the substances you use, the books you read, the internet sites you visit, the type of healthcare you can and can't get, and for what reasons you can and can't get otherwise legal healthcare. What can and cannot be taught in school, what must be hung from the walls of our schools, like the 10 Commandments. It's just outrageous to put their thumb on the scale and say, we command as the government, you must do these things, believe these things, act this way. Democrats are the party of freedom right now. And I can't believe that it's swung so far that way in my lifetime, but I think it's just unambiguous that when you look at the two parties, only one believes in personal freedom, the other believes in it as long as your personal views of freedom align with theirs.
Well, I think too, and maybe this is a broader topic, but when I look at the bills that you and your colleagues are pushing forward, they solve problems that people in society have. And that is our intention, to make a better society.
Absolutely.
And I think when we look at the Republican Party in the last 10 or 15 years, we see people that want earmarks behind their name on a campaign flyer that they can say, I pushed for the shortest abortion term restrictive, language in the whole nation, and they want that. I can't, of course, when I look at some of the bad bills we're going to talk about, I can't imagine people approaching lawmakers saying, after 4 years of service, you should be a licensed lawyer. That's going to solve all the problems.
Hold on, your viewers are going to think we're making this up. We are not. There is a bill that was filed by a representative named Lori Van Winkle. She serves on the Minot area. And it has provisions in it that would, let's charitably say, create alternative pathways to become a licensed attorney in North Dakota. Now, if I peel back a little bit, I'm sort of supportive of this idea. I brought a bill last session to say, let's look at how we do the bar exam. We need more attorneys in our state, especially in small town parts of North Dakota. You go to Slope County, good luck finding a lawyer that lives in that county, right? So I'm open to this idea. Maybe we should make it easier for folks to practice law. But what her bill does is say one of the alternative paths is if you get elected to the North Dakota House or Senate, serve just 4 years, one term, you're qualified to sit for the bar exam. And by golly, if you pass it, you're a licensed attorney in the state of North Dakota.
I'm thinking that is a huge opportunity for Mr. Simons out in Dickinson. He could start another career after he gets done cutting hair.
I think some of the friends, the lobbyist friends in the back of the chamber who are actually licensed attorneys, they're starting to make bets on which of us would actually pass the bar. And there's only 5 attorneys that serve right now, so there's a real opportunity for growth in the workforce there. But it's just kind of a patently absurd idea. Clearly, being a legislator does not qualify you to be an attorney any more than it qualifies you to be an engineer or a nurse or a doctor. But maybe we should do that. We have a lot of legislators who want to tell us what we can and can't do in a doctor's office. So let's cut out the middleman. Let's get them a pair of scrubs, a medical degree, and then we'll just go see our legislator for a one-stop shop. They can give us legal advice, medical advice, teach our kids. It'll really save some time. But I think that should highlight some of the silly season stuff we get. We try hard as Democrats not to hyperventilate because there's so many bad bills that come. You got to pace yourself a little bit. But, I think if we end this session with legislators becoming automatic lawyers, we've done a disservice to the state.
Yeah, we can do better. We deserve better. Any other great bills you want to talk about before I ask what your favorite bad bill is?
Oh, that's funny. I'll highlight just a couple of more because we've already had 2 Democratic introduced bills that have passed the House of Representatives. Lori Beth Hager out of Fargo brought a bill that would make it easier for people in border communities like Grand Forks East, Grand Forks, Fargo, Moorhead, to use a substance use disorder voucher across state lines. Because we know folks in those communities might be able to access services better in Moorhead than they can in Fargo. And we don't want the river to just be a wall between them and getting the care they need. So great bill by Representative Hager there, passed overwhelmingly in the House. And a fun one from Representative Liz Conmey out of Fargo. Did you ever notice, Pat, when you went to vote for president this time, that your choices were just Trump or Harris?
Yeah.
You didn't see the Donald J. You didn't see J.D. Vance. You didn't see Kamala. Representative Conmey said, that's weird. So she brought a bill to require both first and last names of presidential candidates to be printed on the ballot. There's a little bit more clarity for folks. I think about maybe a first-time voter who got really excited to vote for Kamala to be confused when they got to the ballot and they had to remember that her last name was Harris. So
Sure.
this might help voters just remember exactly who they're voting for president.
Seems easy. Seems makes sense. Can we talk about the bad ones yet?
Let's talk about a few bad ones.
All right. So I got 4 in front of me: the 10 Commandments bill, the legislators' lawyers bill, school vouchers, and personhood abortion, outlawing essentially IVF. I hate to say which is the worst of those 4.
Well,
they all have their evilness in them.
We've spent some time on legislative lawyers already, so let's start with 10 Commandments. So the bill, as filed, would require every K-12 classroom in North Dakota to post the 10 Commandments in a prominent place in the classroom. This bill gets it also applies to our college campuses. Every classroom, laboratory, common space on our university campuses to post it. I heard one number from the Fargo Public School District. If this bill were to pass, it'd be on the hook for nearly 850 posters they'd have to put up in their classroom. So there's a financial cost to all of this too. What I find just striking in this bill, though, is not just the 10 Commandments. It lists them and selects the exact translation of the Bible you must use. And we went real accessible, real modern for kids. You know, we use sort of Gen Z vibes, and they selected the King James version of the Bible. You know, thou shalt nots, coveting thy neighbor and thy neighbor's manservant. I think that's going to be really accessible to elementary school kids. I am super excited, too, for my kindergartner to learn from Mrs. Palmasino what adultery is. I think she's probably thrilled to be teaching that lesson. But it's just ridiculous, right? There's a long-standing, numbering difference between Catholics and Protestants on how we enumerate those 10 Commandments. So this picks a side in that debate. And of course, it leaves out every Jewish student in the state, Muslim student in the state, Hindu student in the state, non-religious student in the state. If this doesn't violate the letter of the First Amendment, which I think it does, it certainly violates the spirit of it. And, as somebody who believes in the 10 Commandments, studied the 10 Commandments, when I was in Sunday school and confirmation, I find it offensive as a person of faith to think that just posting them has some mystical powers, that if they're just there, then the children will absorb the lessons. That's not how the faith works, right?
Well, so my thoughts, and we're in South Bismarck. I went to school in New Mary for college. I can't, for the life of me, think that the 10 Commandments, maybe they were in a couple hallways, but they definitely weren't in every classroom. I definitely didn't absorb them either. So
some of my colleagues in the House caucus have suggested an amendment that perhaps they should be posted in every room of the White House.
Oh, that'd be.
There's a lot of false witness being born in the White House, I think.
Thou shalt not adulterate in this room. Well, it's too funny that lawyers wouldn't know that being passed is going to incur a lawsuit. So,
well, it would absolutely incur a lawsuit. There's a federal Supreme Court case dating back to the 80s that struck down a prior attempt to do this in North Dakota. The state of Louisiana has a new far-right legislature and governor, and they just enacted this last year. A court's already enjoined that. So we know we're going to get hauled into court immediately, as we should. But that's more of your tax dollars that go to defending just a frivolous piece of legislation.
I think I joked to Gretchen that they should start including the lawsuit dollars in the fiscal note to some of these bills. How much is this going to cost to support? Legislator lawyers, did we beat that one enough?
I think that dead horse has been beaten. But
so how about vouchers? Public funding for private schools.
Yep, that's what we mean when we say vouchers. This notion that some of your taxpayer dollars that you contribute through sales tax, through income tax, through motor vehicle excise tax, wherever you contribute, property tax, where you're contributing those dollars, we take those instead of giving them to our K-12 public schools that have a constitutional obligation to educate every child in the state, no matter rich or poor, whatever race they are, what religion they are, what ethnicity they are, whether they have special needs. They have to educate those kids, and they do it well. It would take money we could invest and grow and strengthen those schools, and it's going to siphon it off to private schools. And I think that's just a really bad idea. It's something I'm never going to support, right? And look where these private schools are in the state. Here in Bismarck, you've got a couple.
Yeah.
I've got a couple in Grand Forks. Well, actually, the biggest ones are across the river in Minnesota, in my community. Fargo's got a few. Minot's got options. But if you live in Rugby or Hazen or Beulah or Wyndmere, good luck. Good luck finding a private school in your community. So you're subsidizing these wealthy urban families who are choosing, as is their right, to send their kids to private school. There's just nothing good about this idea, Pat.
The thing that gets me about it, and kind of riffing on this idea, but we're, as a state, unhappy with property tax, and our property tax funds local schools. And then we're going to take the funding from local schools and give it to private schools. Like, the funding is already the source of the contentious property taxes. So why would we want to make that bucket have less money in it and give it to the private schools? And I'll tell you what, I want all schools to be nice, but when I drive by Shiloh, when I drive by the private schools in Fargo, they're gorgeous.
They sure are.
And I'm not saying that they don't need more money, but I already feel like they're funded pretty well.
They sure are. They are often tied to wealthy national entities that fund them, religious entities. The last time I was in Rome, it didn't look like the Catholic Church was struggling financially. And that's great. If they want to make those investments, that's wonderful. I'd encourage them to be generous with the scholarships they offer to families that can't afford that tuition, but that's not our role as the state. And one thing we've got to watch in this voucher debate is they're kind of rebranding them. They know this voucher word is not a good idea. Look what happened just last November in the 2024 elections. This notion of public money for private school tuition was on the ballot. It was on in 3 states: Colorado, Nebraska, Kentucky. And we saw what happened nationally. It wasn't a great night for progressives and Democrats and progressive ideas. The vouchers lost in all 3 of those states, and lost big time. In conservative places like Kentucky and Nebraska, especially. So this is an area, we as Democrats, we get accused of being in a bubble, right? We're just the coastal elites. On this one, Republicans got to realize it's them in the bubble. This is something their wealthy donors want, their wealthy national interests want. People on the ground, people in the states do not want this. So I would challenge our Republican friends, get out of your own bubble on this. Stop pushing this idea. And what I was referencing, we've got to be careful at here, is they've rebranded vouchers as educational savings accounts now.
Oh, I saw that.
So yeah, you're going to hear about educational savings account, or ESAs. Be careful about that. That's just a code word for vouchers. And then they might take a little baby step. They might just dip their toes in and say, okay, what we're going to do is give every kid in the state $500, $1,000. And you can use it for tuba lessons, or Latin camp, or to get that help for dyslexia that's not available in schools. We'd all love that. That's a great idea. We should be able to, we want to help kids that can't take advantage of those. But even if it's not in this session's version of educational savings account, that is absolutely going to pave the way to say, well, next we're gonna double that for people in private schools, and you can just send the check right to Capstone Academy in Fargo, or Bishop Ryan in Minot. So it's absolutely going to be a Trojan horse type proposal. So we really got to guard against that happening here in 2025.
The last one on here: personhood, abortion, and outlawing IVF. I saw this IVF really blew up in the last couple of days on my feed, on my algorithm. Are they going after this again?
They are, and here's what's so frustrating about it is North Dakota's already said no. Back in, I think, 2014 there was an attempt to put this notion of what they brand as personhood. What it says is, I think, life starts at fertilization. Well, that's going to imperil lots of contraception. It's going to make all abortion healthcare illegal, and it's going to outlaw IVF procedures on day one of that bill becoming law. And the voters in North Dakota rejected it big time when it was on the ballot box. And this is just another instance of Republicans disregarding what voters are saying, not getting the message, maybe not caring what the voters will say. They are just stuck on this rigid ideology that they, as Republican lawmakers, should get to decide what women across North Dakota do with their bodies. And that's just wrong. And there's just such a clear contrast here between where Republicans, who are all the sponsors of that bill, are, and Democrats are. We've got the Republican personhood bill that would outlaw in vitro fertilization from the minute it becomes law. And think how many people you know whose own child was conceived that way, who have a grandchild, a sibling. we're all 1 degree away from somebody.
Right. Yeah. No, I actually can't believe in the last 4 or 5 years, I just eclipsed my over the hill mark at 40, but a tremendous amount of people in my circle have looked to IVF for fertility treatments, and they have beautiful babies. And I think of it like they're limiting our ability to family plan.
Absolutely.
You want to have a family on your own terms when you're ready. Like, why would they put a government restriction on that? Doesn't make sense. And yeah, they're just going after it again. The quote unquote party of small government, trying to limit how you can doctor.
But the contrast here is the bills Representative Carla Rose Hansen has introduced that would protect in law your right to access IVF and your right to access contraception.
Oh, Carla.
And Representative Hansen was ready for this argument that people were going to make sure, well, nobody's coming for it in this state. Why would we put it in law? It's not at risk. It's not at risk. Well, that's BS. We see it right here. There's literally a bill. They're going to be heard on the same day in a House committee. One bill would ban IVF. The other would protect IVF in law. And it's the Democrat that introduced the bill to protect IVF. And Representative Rose Hansen is really good at her job. She's got bipartisan support on this bill. A lot of our Republican colleagues, they know they have family. They themselves have had children through IVF. So we know there's going to be reasonable, like-minded Republicans who will support this. But all the credit goes to Representative Rose Hansen for taking the initiative to introduce that bill, building a coalition of women, of parents, of doctors, of other healthcare providers to support that bill, because it's the right thing to do. We cannot turn off IVF access here in North Dakota just to further some ideological extreme agenda.
Well, I'm going to shift you just a little bit past this, if that's all right. When you talk about building a coalition, I saw last week Representative Casper. I'm going to say his name 3 times. Casper.
Does he appear?
So you remember who it is. You put together 2 bills in 2 days that failed 4 to 94. He withdrew them. And I think, like, why wouldn't you work with your peer group to see if there is support? Why wouldn't you work with co-sponsors to make sure that people are going to bring this forward? Why wouldn't you try to get that bipartisan buy-in before you brought a bill to the table? And it sounds like Carla Rose Hansen's doing that.
Absolutely. Look, some people come to Bismarck to serve the public, others come to serve their own ego. And I think it was Harry Truman, and I'm going to paraphrase a quote of his, that you can get a lot of stuff done if you don't care who gets credit. That's our philosophy as Democrats in the North Dakota legislature. Some people say they're stealing our ideas. I don't really care. If kids get fed at school and a Republican gets credit, that's a win in my book. If IVF gets protected and a Republican gets credit, that's a win in my book. I know behind the scenes is people like Representative Rose Hansen, Representative Hager, that are really doing the hard work to build those coalitions. That's how you govern. Governing isn't done by TikTok, by tweets, by Truth Social posts. It's done by that hard work, and I'm just so lucky to have folks in my caucus who really do put in that effort.
So tell me about you. I'm gonna. What committees are you on? What bills did you bring forward? So let's start with committees. What are you serving?
I'll be serving my 3rd session on the House Finance and Taxation Committee. Okay. So that's a really opportune. It's an opportune session to be on that committee. Obviously, the property tax discussion is going to be really one of the big economic focuses of our time in Bismarck. So I'm glad to bring a little bit of my expertise back to that now that you've been in that role for 2 sessions before. Super excited to welcome a new first-year lawmaker, Representative Austin Foss, out of North Fargo, to that committee. He's already hit the ground running and is diving into those complex issues of property tax. So that's my one committee I serve on this year. I use the rest of the week to focus on leadership responsibilities, being the House Minority Leader. And this session, I introduced just one bill. I had a very small part in that 620 bills, because I'm working with all these coalitions behind the scenes too, and making sure the trains run on time in our caucus. But the bill, I'm really proud of. It just passed out of committee unanimously yesterday. It's what we in the legislature call an old friend, because it's a bill I brought last year and brought back this year. And in North Dakota currently, if you're a teacher and you've been in the classroom for 30 years, you qualify for a lifetime license. And that's great. You should. You have proven your worth to the parents of your community, the students, the administrators, your colleagues. But by the time you hit 30 years in your profession, you're pretty close to retirement age, right? You're really count the hours until you can retire and maybe go enjoy winters in Arizona or Florida. But what my bill does is lower that 30 years to 20 years. That's going to hit teachers kind of in the peak of their career, right in that prime of their career. They've been practicing for 2 decades, right? They have their degree, they got their student teaching, they've done hours and hours of continuing education credits. I think they have earned the right to be recognized as the skilled professionals they are by giving them that lifetime license at 20 years. They will have completed like 5 renewal cycles by that time. In doing so, they're going to save out-of-pocket costs for the license fees. They're going to save out-of-pocket costs for all the college courses they have to take to continue to get, qualify for their next license. They're going to save the time and anxiety that comes with renewing your license. And it's got guardrails in there to make sure, like, look, if the teacher gets arrested, we find out that they've done inappropriate things, the board can still revoke that license. Make sure they're not in a classroom, not risking student safety. And for anybody that's worried about the teachers keeping up with the best practices, our teachers, they're lifetime learners. That's the value they're teaching to their students. And every year they have to do professional development that their local districts require. They probably got to do continuing education to move up in the pay scale in their building, in their district. They might have to get an advanced degree to hit that next level of pay that they're eligible for. So the risk of teachers just mailing it in, that's not any educator I know. I don't think it's any educator This is a small way to keep some of our best teachers in the classroom. Nobody's claiming it's going to solve the teacher crisis here in North Dakota, but I was so fortunate to have not only the largest union in the states that represent teachers, North Dakota United, supporting the bill. School administrators came in to support the bill. I had over a dozen teachers who submitted testimony in support of the bill. Like I said, it came out of committee unanimously. It's going to hit the House floor in the next day or two. It passed overwhelmingly from the House last session, then ran into a bit of a roadblock in the Senate. I had the unique honor of having a bill die on a tied vote. One person was absent that day, so I'm going to make sure everybody's got their vitamin C, stay healthy, cancel any trips they have, get every senator there, and we'll try to get it across the finish line.
Great. Well, that's awesome that you got to support it. I actually shot Chad a text when I saw that passed, and I wanted some more information just to understand it. So it's amazing that we get to speak about it today. Any goals that you have to come out of session this cycle, or anything you want to stay away from? Or
look, I think our goals are, like I said at the top. We got to figure out how can we lower out-of-pocket costs. And let's be honest, as a state government, our options are limited. We don't control the price of the gas you put in your car, the eggs you buy at the grocery store. So where can we make those small differences when we can? That's one of the things that teacher license bill does. It's a small little thing off the plate of educators, just like school meals. $850 a year for a family with a kid. Maybe you have 2 kids. Now you're getting close to $2,000. That's a meaningful difference. So 1, do we help lower out-of-pocket costs? 2, what do we do on property taxes, right? I think we've got to make this decision. Is it a political problem to manage, or is it a policy problem to solve? That's my focus on this. Voters are going to keep bringing measures back, every couple of years if we don't get this right. I'm glad that we're focusing on those primary residence, people's homes. I'm not all that concerned about, big utility companies and what they pay. We already have some pretty good breaks for agricultural land in the state. So let's focus on those primary owners. And I have pretty good feelings about the governor's plan, actually, if we're going to be a little bipartisan here.
Well, I actually just wrote down Kelly with a question mark. Now, all summer, I campaigned on doubling the $500 credit to $1,000, and Kelly supported that. And you know what? I'm glad he did, because I think it's good policy. I also understand he's going to put some legacy fund earnings in a new account to buy down future property tax increase. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. And I think, going back to who gets credit, we don't really care when it's a good idea. But the first person I heard suggest a primary residence tax credit was Bismarck Democratic State Senator Tracy Potter. I think he was the first to introduce the bill. It was taken up 2 years later by then State Senator Merrill Pepcorn, who ran for governor. And now it made its way in a smaller form into the last tax bill from 2023. And now it's a centerpiece of the governor's plan, $1,000 primary residence tax credit. So $1,000 right off the top of your tax bill. What the governor proposes, and I think it's a good idea, is then using some of the earnings we are getting on our investments in the legacy fund, right? It's got about $11 to $12 billion in the fund right now. So that generates a pretty good ROI. It kicks off about 600 to 700 million in earnings every 2 years that we can then reinvest in North Dakota. The governor's proposal will take a stream of that and dedicate it to long-term primary residence tax relief. It actually get everybody in a path to a $0 tax bill. But what I like about it is it does it in a progressive way. It gives help to those who need it most first. So seniors on a fixed income, folks that might be living in a starter home, might be living in a mobile home, maybe lower income, less ability to increase that income. We're going to try to zero out their property tax liability first. And then 10, 12, 15 years down the road, if there's enough money in that fund, well, then we can deal with the people that are able to build, $1 million, $2 million homes on a river or a lake. So I think it takes care of those in need first. We can have a good discussion whether we need to get everybody in a path to zero. I think reasonable minds can disagree on that. But the way the governor outlines the plan, it would sort of help pay for itself. It would get us out of this long-term game of just using our general fund or state's checking account to pay this bill, and instead move it to that investment account from the legacy fund. I think it's consistent with some of those goals of the legacy fund too. That's sort of the carrot of the plan. The stick is caps on our local counties, cities, school districts. And that's going to be hard for a lot of them to swallow. And we got to be careful to get it right, because those are the folks that build roads and bridges. They're the ones that make sure our kids have good schools to go to. They're the ones that provide law enforcement and fire protection in our community. So we don't want to handcuff their ability to do that, but they're also the ones driving the increase in property taxes. And no doubt their expenses have gone up just like our household ones have. So we want to be careful, get it right. We know 3% in Cass County and Burleigh County isn't the same as 3% in, say, Golden Valley, right? Maybe they need to be tied to a dollar amount if they have a special need. But some combination of that, I think, is sort of the right vision. It's probably the best plan I've heard. And I kind of share the governor's vision on this. Let's try something, right? We'll be back in 2 years. If we find out we really screwed it up, then we'll reboot then. But I think folks can just get way too frustrated if all we do is double the primary residence tax credit. Is great, but it doesn't really speak to any sort of long-term relief and reform that folks are looking for.
Well, like I said, I support him, even though I was campaigning against him. And I think I want more of that cross the aisle, nonpartisan, solutions-based approach to my government. And it sounds like you guys are doing that in our caucus. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Well, tell you, do you have any last words of wisdom or closing comments for us?
I think people always ask, how can we help? What's your caucus need? It can get lonely in the halls of the Capitol when we only got 11 representatives and 5 senators. I think a lot of folks that are tuning in probably feel that frustration of what happened in the 2024 elections. It's the easiest thing in the world to just sort of shrink away from public life, from public policy, and from politics. I will confess to feeling that urge many a days as well. But there's 16 of us that overcame that, steel our spines, put our shoulders back, walk into the Capitol ready to fight for what's right. Like you said, we're going to be there to work across the aisle in every opportunity we can, but we're also sort of the last guard, like I said, a guardian of all these things that we've been fighting for. So when bills come that take us backwards on issues of justice and equality and fairness and rule of law, we're going to stand against them. We have finite resources. We might not even be able to speak out every single time, but for those watching, let us know what the most important issues are to you. Let us know that you stand with us. We want to know that we have people behind us in this fight, and we know we do. But to get that reminder to see you in person, come visit us in Bismarck. That's a fun time. Yeah. You can literally come sit on the House and Senate floor. Come sit by myself. You'll be literally in the middle of your democratic process. You couldn't get much more 50-yard line than I sit in the House of Representatives. It's a great time. Bring your kids. I think they especially enjoy, pressing the buttons, voting yes or no on a bill. We know our government is better when more citizens participate. If you're not getting responses from your elected officials and you're a Democrat, reach out to one of us. Let us know. Let us be that conduit. Let us connect you. Maybe they were just getting inundated with emails and they need a personal connection. We'll help make that. But we want to be responsive, not just to Democrats, of course, to everybody that we represent, but we'd love to see people actively participate, because we get the government we deserve. We get the government that we fight for. And the easiest thing to do right now is to stop that fight. We have to guard against that.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Pat.
Well, like I said earlier, every time Zach opens his mouth, I make sure to stop and to give him my full attention. And I hope you found him as informative, as funny, as caring, as lawyer snarky as he is. And you know, something he touched on is really talked about a lot, but we don't talk about it publicly. And something that Zach and I touched on was what makes us a Democrat. So I got the party name right in my background. I've worn the sign on my campaign several cycles. I've been a high-end volunteer for many years, almost a decade. And my reason that I'm a Democrat is because I own a small business. There's 8 or 9 of us at any given time. I really honestly care about my employees. I care about their well-being. I care about their life outside of work. We really structure ourselves and our culture to build people up. In addition to our employees, my customers really get the red carpet treatment. I really make sure I deliver a good product. I care about the waste I generate. I care about the vendors and how I treat my vendors. I really care about my community. And I think that that is pretty typical. Farm families, small businesses, that's very North Dakota to quite honestly give a shit about the people around you. And I feel like at some point, and I don't know where that point is, if it's 50 or 100 or 500 or 5,000 employees, but at some point, the effects of your actions and how they have on others gets lost in the management, in the day-to-day, in the way that you treat your clients, in the way that you treat your tenured employees. And I think at some point we need to regulate those businesses, especially when we talk about, you know, worldwide conglomerates and their effect of trade policies and where they're exporting their labor to. I don't think the Republicans are going to do it. I think if you're mad at corporations, I think if the corporations lean on employees too much, they have too hard of an environmental impact. You know, they're quite honestly playing games with stock buybacks. I think at some point they need regulated. And that's what brings me to the Democratic side of things, because I do not believe that the Republicans are going to do that. So that's what makes me a Democrat. That's my number one issue. What are your thoughts on that, Lisa? You ever thought about the way corporations treat people and their employees?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We hear stories nationwide about how employees are treated, and you really said that in the perfect way. It's you point out how there's all these little different pieces to it that we don't always think about, because maybe we're not small business owners and we don't think about the structure that way. But it really does matter. Everything that a business owner does, it has a ripple effect. And if you are centered in making sure that you're treating your employees with respect, and that you're making sure that they're taken care of, and you're being mindful of the environment, and again, those are just things that maybe not everyone thinks about, but they truly do have effects. And I think that's something that a lot of people might need to maybe look into more and think about. But I thought you did a really good job explaining that, just as for you being a small business owner.
Well, you know, in business, they always talk about the bottom line. The bottom line refers to the profitability of a company. I would challenge that there's more than one bottom line, that the profitability isn't the only measure of standard of success that businesses have interpersonally with their consumers, their customers, their employees, their stockholders, their environment. We need to be better about that. But that's just my story. What brings you to the blue side, Lisa?
Well, as simple as it sounds, I'm a Democrat because I truly believe that we walk and we talk and we show through our behavior and our words, our actions to those around us, that we live by the golden rule, which is you treat others the way that you'd want to be treated. We want our fellow Americans, our neighbors, our families to feel like they can live a life that they're going to be respected and be treated with dignity. And honestly, we don't allow a single agenda or a religion to dictate or to choose how we legislate, and we don't use it to justify harmful bills. And I think that's what really sets us apart. But also that we understand and recognize so many different backgrounds and lifestyles, and we respect that. We look at people's traditions and their preference to be religious or non-religious. We truly want everybody to succeed. We look out for each other, and we all, in the end, we want every American to be able to achieve the American dream. And that's what brought me over. I mean, honestly, we care so much about, like you had mentioned, the environment. We care about people's rights. And that's really what brought me over. And I've been that way all my life. And that's never going to change. I'm an empath by nature. And this party aligns with just who I am as a person and as a mother. And I'm proud of that.
You know, I think about two things. I'll wrap that with, obviously, like our values are on supporting small businesses, supporting individuals all throughout life. And really it comes down to people over profit. Like we really believe that people need to have a standard of living that is provides dignity. We have end of life dignity. We care about the human experience. So as you're watching session, as you're watching the national news unfold, just know that we really care about you, about your life. You know, both Lisa and I said that in a very unscripted manner. So you guys, I'll tell you what, I'll leave with this. I saw this quote this week and I thought it would be worth sharing. And really, especially with both of our democratic definitions, I think this lands. But the saying is, character is how you treat those who can do nothing for you. And again, when you're looking at the legislation coming through session, as you're looking at the national news, just know that phrase, character is how you treat those who can do absolutely nothing for you. And with that, I'll wrap. I appreciate you coming with. Please join the party. Please lean in. Please find something that you're good at that the party needs and do that in the most amazing way. I appreciate you. Thanks.